We've been watching R&F for a while now, and things don't seem to have become any better for them.
Yes, certainly looks like they're scrambling to make sure that they can avoid a default or a missed payment with this January 13th bond. I think in some ways it is a sort of a bit of a surprise to investors. That note was trading somewhere in the 80 cents range, which obviously doesn't suggest a huge assessment or a risk of default. Obviously that's come down quite a ways now, saying that the rest of the curve was really under pressure. And as you say, we have been looking at Guangzhou R&F, which is one of China's sort of smaller borrowers for quite some time. More than $5 billion of outstanding dollar debt, though, so certainly quite a lot at stake for this firm and for global investors, of course. To some extent, the fact that it sort of is a weaker rated firm and it was to some extent also anticipated, I think the market has absorbed it fairly well. I think in general the focus really still is unfortunately on Shimao, where by contrast there was really very little signs that it was in quite the sort of straits that it's in, and there was very little indication we would see the type of slump in the bond prices and the share prices that we've seen so far this week.
So analysts are now calling an end to the property policy tightening cycle. Where does that leave the sector as we head into the new year?
Absolutely, yes. And certainly we've seen some of those sort of easing signs, sort of minor injections of liquidity, as well as sort of some signs of, trying to focus on stabilizing the market. On the other hand, I think when you look at, sort of, for example, Bloomberg's China credit tracker, we still see that stress is extremely elevated in the offshore market. And going into 2022, I think sort of key things to watch are any more sort of surprise defaults by firms that really weren't anticipated to be under that level of stress, any signs of further easing policy-wise, of course, and finally, fundamentally at the sales. This is really the thing that is going to shore up developers' finances better than anything else can, really. And so if sales continue to be under the type of pressure that they've been so far, it's going to be really, really difficult for firms to sort of think about reshifting and kind of progressing with their reducing leverage and whatnot. The other key factor, of course, remains, can offshore developers tap? So can developers tap that offshore market, which has been shut effectively for so many borrowers for so long now? Some analysts saying it's not going to be open for sort of developers until the second half of 2022. Now, what we're seeing at Guangzhou R&F is really just the latest result of that. So long as developers aren't able to roll over or refinance their dollar debt, an enormous number of them are going to continue facing precisely the same type of challenge that R&F is today.